Maxie, I've been thinking, should we do season 3 on the Dr. Joe show? You sure? You sure it's a good idea? You know, that's what I'm talking about. Nicaragua Cigar Company is Nicaragua's very first cigar manufacturer, and the brand, Joya de Nicaragua, is the first cigar offered by Nicaragua for international export. So, right away, this brand seems to have a bright future. They're the first cigar company, Nicaragua Cigar Company, the first cigar company established within Nicaragua, producing the first Nicaraguan cigar to be exported out of Nicaragua all over the world, not just to the US, but to a wide range of European countries as well, especially London, especially England. London, they had a distributor there. By the second year, 2 years, they were producing 2 million cigars a year. That's not bad. That's very quick. But the problem, and there's always a problem because where there's cheese, there will be rats. The problem was that Nicaragua was being run as a dictatorship, and even worse, it was being run by a man known as Anastasio Somoza. Well, Somoza's family had been in power of Nicaragua for decades. They were a dynasty. And he, Somoza, had his hand in every successful business industry in the country. Rather, he actually owned every successful business industry in the country, and he would do that by making sure he possessed more than 50% of any company's shares. He already was doing very well with coffee, sugarcane, and when tobacco came along, he smelled more money. So what he did was he went to Bermejo and Camacho and told him that they had outstanding loans with the National Bank of Nicaragua, amounting to God knows how much, and he gave them a lousy 40 days to repay all of these loans. He basically gave them two options, of which they could only choose one. The other option was to forfeit 70% of Nicaragua Cigar Company to the government, and the government was Somoza. So, long story short, Somoza ends up owning 70% of Nicaragua Cigar Company, leaving Camacho and Bermejo with a lousy 15% apiece. This is around 1971. And by 1974, Camacho and Bermejo already sold the rest of the shares they had left and split the company. That was it for them. But even though the original owners were gone, the company thrived. I mean, after all, Somoza wanted money. And if you're going to get money from any industry, it has to do well. Somewhere between 1974 and 1976, Joya de Nicaragua actually became the official cigar of the United States White House. Again, there's always a story about how these things happen or when they happened. Well, many articles conflict about the actual date. Some say 74, some say 76, so I say between 74 and 76. It is known that around 1971, Somoza met with Nixon, and while in the White House, they presented him with a Joya de Nicaragua cigar. So he and Nixon it brought up conversation. He was kind of taken aback, I suppose. I mean, maybe not really. People write articles and they say he was surprised that Nixon offered him a Joya de Nicaragua. Was he really? I mean, he knew that there's an embargo. Or maybe he said, well, sure, there's an embargo, but the government's still going to smoke Cubans, right? So maybe he was surprised. Either way, the story goes, Nixon offers him a Joya de Nicaragua, and he decides, well, let me push this. And he says, well, how about I supply Joya de Nicaragua catered, to cater for events and gatherings and banquets and whatever big dignitarian feasts you decide to have at the White House. And Nixon gives it the okay. So somewhere between 74 and 76, it indeed becomes the official cigar of the White House. And of course, this is a big promo booster for Joya de Nicaragua, the official cigar of the United States White House. And not only that, Somoza also made it the official cigar of Nicaragua. So now it's the official cigar of two countries, basically. And because if you're the official cigar of the White House, you're the official cigar of the United States, really. And it does extremely well. By 1976, they're pushing 6 to 8 million cigars a year. Not even a decade after the company opens. 6 to 8 million cigars a year. All over Europe, mostly, though, to the United States. It was doing so well, in fact, that Somoza had a brand new factory built on the outskirts of Esteli, where he moved hundreds of his workers and started producing even more cigars. That factory actually still stands there today, but not exactly that one, because it would have to be burnt down and rebuilt. The rebuilt one is the one that stands there today. But rewind. How the hell did it burn down? Well, enter the Sandinistas. We've met these guys before when talking about Padron. So the Sandinista rebellion begins, and on September of 1978, the brand new factory is burnt to the ground. It was only standing there for about a year or two, and it's burnt to the ground. Well, why exactly was it burnt down? Well, their main goal was to get Somoza out of power. And to do that, you have to bankrupt the guy. You have to make sure he has absolutely no money left, no control over anything. So they aim to destroy anything he owns, which includes Nicaragua Cigar Company. However, there's a problem here. Somoza actually owns over 40% of all of Nicaragua's private business. So you can imagine just how much destruction was going on here. 40%, I mean, if you say 40, 60, you might as well say 50%. 50% of all business in Nicaragua is susceptible to being blown the fuck up. And that's exactly what happens. Over 50,000 people die in this revolution before Somoza is finally booted out of power. On July 19th of 1979, Somoza surrenders. He's exiled, and he flees to Miami and then Paraguay. And in case you care and are wondering what happened to him, he was assassinated, shot while riding in his Mercedes-Benz motorcade or something in the streets of Paraguay by some other rebel group. So Somoza is out of power, dead, or will be dead in a year. The Sandinistas are in control, and the factory is rebuilt on September of 1979, almost exactly a year to the day it was burnt down. So, for Nicaragua Cigar Company, life seemingly goes on. Workers start rolling cigars again, even though they're not being paid for it at the time. They're being given government assistance. I mean, I guess, what else are you going to do? So life kind of goes on, but not really, because things are about to change big time. You see, the Sandinistas basically did to Nicaragua because of the politics, their politics and governmental principles, that Castro did to Cuba. One of those things, of course, was to nationalize every industry, including the tobacco industry. Well, similar cause reaps similar effect. And in 1984, then President Ronald Reagan placed a full embargo of all goods coming into and going out of Nicaragua. No imports, no exports. Nicaragua is blocked off, the same way that Cuba is blocked off. And what does this mean? That Nicaraguan cigars are illegal in the United States. And if you think this is something that just blew over in a few months, and that's why you've never heard of it, well, think again. This embargo is about to last a decade and then some. Okay, so that's, I think, a pretty good place to take a break. Let's take our band off here because we are getting close to it because of how wide the band is and where it's placed. A little further down the cigar there. See? First third. So, maybe a little more. Anyway. First third was good. Again, the flavors are not that deep. They're all kind of mid-range. More coffee coming in, a lot more leather coming in, hints of pepper, spice has died down. The cigar overall is woody with this hickory note that I keep talking about. Slightly meaty, not as meaty as I expected it to be, and it's coming along. It's fairly strong, but the smoke is not very dense. It's actually rather kind of wispy. Coming along into our second third here, I'm developing a little bit of an uneven burn, so I got to fix that up. That's going to need a little bit of a fix. But, yeah, much stronger coffee flavors starting to kick in now in the second third. Leather, black pepper, almost a flavor like green pepper. I mean like the vegetable green pepper. Tasty. Very different. Let's see if I fix that up and we'll move along with our brand history. So, a Nicaraguan embargo. How about that? Well, that was very bad for Nicaragua Cigar Company. At the time, they're producing 10 million cigars annually. 10 million cigars a year. And no one to buy them. No one to buy them. 10 million cigars a year. Making cigars was not the problem. That was fine. I mean, these guys were ready to make cigars in any condition. It was the market that was the problem. Well, luckily, at the time, the Minister of Foreign Trade for Nicaragua was a man named Dr. Alejandro Martinez Cuenca. Another name you should become familiar with because he's very big in the cigar industry. Well, we'll get to how big. Cuenca decides to try to make money, obviously, for Nicaragua any way he can, and one of those ways is to find new markets for the cigar industry that has been doing so well over the last decade. You see, I just want to pause for a moment here. I actually did pause for a moment, and I ran upstairs and put these cigars away because it's just way too cold, and I think I can actually hear them cracking. If they're going to be smokable, they can't stay there. I want to make a point. And that point is that Joya de Nicaragua, or at the time Nicaragua Cigar Company, is a company that beat all the odds. And not just beat all the odds, but did so with conviction. You see, there were other companies that started up after Joya, or during the same time, or Nicaragua Cigar Company, like Padron, for instance, and many other little startups that followed along, seeing that there was money to be made. But Joya, Nicaragua Cigar Company, is the only one that was able to make it through and continue to operate within Nicaragua all throughout the 80s. You know, and it wasn't just the absolutely terrible economy, or the Sandinistas, or one revolution and rebellion after another, or the embargo, you know, because a lot of companies can deal with Sandinistas. Padron did, and some didn't. I mean, you know, Fuente didn't. But no one can deal with an embargo on their main customer, and be stuck with nobody to sell cigars to. Everybody ran. They said this is a lost cause. But Joya didn't. Nicaragua Cigar Company didn't. You know, even without an owner, even with Somoza gone and being nationalized, and then even after that, it's absolutely amazing that the company continued to operate. And it wasn't just all that aforementioned stuff. It was war. It was all-out war, literally. You see, in 1982, the Contra Revolution, the Contra Rebellion, started. And this was a war heavily financed by then-President Ronald Reagan that would last for over 8 years. You know, and war is one thing. You say, well, you know, okay, it's war, but I don't think a lot of people, including myself, really. I'm a history guy. I love history, and I try to think, if I was there, how would it be? You know, you put yourself in these people's shoes, and okay, yeah, you're making cigars. You're not involved in the fighting, or are you? A lot of this fighting took place right in the regions that had the most to do with the tobacco industry. Esteli, Candegas, Jalapa Valley. So fighting took place right within the tobacco fields, the very tobacco fields, quite literally, in the tobacco fields as these guys were working. You know, you could be primming leaves one minute, and the next minute you're looking through fucking bullet holes in the leaf, wondering if it's still eligible to make a good wrapper or not. Probably wondering a lot more than that, you know? And I put myself there and say, what if I was there? I would be, let's say I was harvesting my tobacco crop, or not even my tobacco crop, someone else's fucking tobacco crop, and all of a sudden gunfire breaks out, and people are firing AK-47s back and forth at each other, and I'm stuck in the middle. Fuck that, man! Fuck that! You know? I would probably run into the factory, barricade myself, grab as many cigars as I could, and start smoking while thinking of a fucking way out of there. So, it wasn't just the terrible economy. It wasn't just the oppression. It wasn't just being nationalized. It wasn't just being, you know, a laborer who was making no money except for the peanuts the government was willing to hand you. All right? All these guys, those are the guys we have to thank for continuing the Nicaraguan cigar industry. And it wasn't just the embargo, and it wasn't just the Sandinistas. It was everything. All of this shit combined, you know? So in 1990, the Contra Rebellion is finally over. The Sandinistas are finally out of power. And get this, they're out of power because they lost to a fucking election. Now, see, here's the things that I don't understand about politics, really, and I don't understand how these Latin American countries, operate. But, I mean, one minute you're willing to fucking fight a war, you're fighting in the fucking jungles and in the tobacco fields, and you're fucking killing people. You got into power in the first place by killing over 50,000 people, and you let yourselves be taken out of power by losing to a fucking election? It doesn't seem to make sense, you know? Well, I guess what happened is that the fighting got so bad and so many people were dying that they kind of came to an agreement to have an election. I guess that's how it would have to happen. You know, I'm not going to start reading deep into the history on this right now because it has only as much to do with the subject we're talking about as it does to do with the tobacco fields and Nicaragua and its tobacco industry. So we're going to leave that and get to the point we are at now, which is 1990. And where is Nicaragua Cigar Company in 1990? Well, it's in a position where it's still making cigars, but the embargo is still on the United States. The Nicaragua-U.S. embargo is still ongoing, and it would be for another 4 years. So they really don't have a large number of clients. And they don't know who owns the company. They don't know who owns the company. Say goodnight, Max.